Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Today we're learning some pretty exciting new stuff, and we're going to be doing some board work, and we'll be learning some very new topics. So if you've been singing with us for a while, you should know the whole diatonic scale in solfa syllables. You should know do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. You know how to sing them, you know how to read and write them. You know all of the signs. You're aware that there are high re's and mi's and low la's and so's. And we are now going to transition from just solfa to putting them into specific keys on the board. And so when we write or read on the board, in order to do that, we will need something to identify which pitches we'll be looking at. See, these staves that we do are neutral, and we've been treating them that way all along, right? I've said multiple times, do can be anywhere, mi could be anywhere, and we move them around all the time. We're going to introduce something this time called clefs. So a clef actually just comes from the word for key, so it means key. And a clef is just a symbol that goes right at the beginning on the far left of the staff, which will tell you specifically which notes go on which lines and spaces. And there are different clefs. Some are used to cover lower pitches, maybe for a cello or an upright bass, or if you're singing for a bass voice. But the one that we're going to learn first is the one that's used for higher pitched instruments like violins, flutes, the right hand of a piano, or more specifically for people singing in high registers like a soprano or alto, most women's voices. And if you're a child, probably you too. That clef is called a treble clef. And some people call it a G clef. So Georgia is going to write one for us so that we can see what they look like. Have you ever seen something like that before? Maybe you have a musical parent or grandparent who has like a cheesy necktie with a treble clef on it, or you've seen that on some design related to music. This is called a treble clef. Some people call it a G clef, and the reason is because, first of all, it's actually, traditionally, this is supposed to be like a very ornamental, decorative version of the letter G. It doesn't look a whole lot like a G to me in its modern form, but the other reason we call it a G clef is actually more specifically because the little squiggly circle at the bottom, right there, shows us where on the staff we would find a G. And we're actually going to call that note a G today, not a so or a mi or a fa. And so this clef is going to help us to learn those notes. So first things first, we have to know how to recognize it. It looks like that, and that's telling us we're in treble clef. But if we wanted to write a melody, you also need to be able to write that pretty wild squiggle there. So I'm going to have Georgia go through again, kind of in slow motion, and show you how to write it. And then I'd like you to get out some staff paper or 5 lines on a piece of paper and try to draw a couple of treble clefs.
Great. The hardest part for me when I started drawing these was remembering which way all the squiggles go. So it kind of helps me to think that this first part sort of looks like a J. You know, the letter J in the alphabet. Sometimes it has that on top. Sometimes it doesn't. See? They go the same way. And then from there, and you always want to make sure that at the end, this little curl ends around this second line here, because that's going to be a G. I'll draw one more. Can you try drawing one too? So we start with a dot, and then we curve up, over, and curl around that G.
And if you look at handwritten music scores, you'll see all kinds of different clefs. Some are really beautiful and ornate and maybe even colored in. You'll see old Gregorian chant books or old books from the Renaissance and the medieval times that have really, really fancy looking treble clefs. Or you'll see ones that look like that, and I'll admit mine is not quite as beautiful as some
I'm
others.
going faster. Mine look like that too.
So it's okay. It needn't be a work of art, but you just want to make sure that it's clear this is the clef we're looking at. So go ahead. You could pause the video here and draw as many more as you'd like to, and then we'll move on.
Nice. Did you draw a few? So, as Mr. Roberts was saying, now that we have this clef, we did already tell you that this note here is a G. What about all the other ones? In the musical alphabet, when you're singing notes, we've only talked so far about the solfa names. So we've talked about do and re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and then do and on, more like that. But there are things called pitches, and a pitch will be a letter from the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, or G. We don't have any H's, we just go back to A. So it would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and on like that. So if you went all the way up a piano, you would find all of those notes and some more that go between them that we'll talk about later. But for now, we're just gonna think about A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And I'm gonna give you some tricks to know where those land on here. So whenever I put a note here, now that I have a treble clef, that is always an F. My A, B, C, D, E, F, and G will never move around on here like my do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti can. So solfa can move anywhere, but these pitches that we're teaching now always sit in the same spot. So we're gonna learn where those spots are now. I'm just gonna write in that. F-A-C-E. That's a word, isn't it? Face. So that's kind of handy. Remember, these are called spaces, those parts, and space and face rhyme, don't they? So that's a really handy trick to remember. Anytime I put a note here now, it's an F. Anytime I put a note there, can you tell me what note that is in treble clef? C. Great. So that's kind of how the spaces would work. And just like each space has a note that always sits on it, each line also has a note to sit on it. So it's a little harder to see these, maybe just because there are lines, but I'll try and draw them anyways. That's an E. You see that? There's an E, a G, a B, a D, and an F. Now, how on earth would we remember those if egbduf is not a word? It's one of my favorite words, egbduf. You can try saying that 3 times fast. And then face is easy to remember. So for this one, let's think of a word that each of these can be the first letter of. Something like elephants grow big, dirty feet. Can you say that with me? Elephants grow big, dirty feet. So counting up from the bottom, we have F-A-C-E, spells face for the space notes. Or for our line notes, elephants grow big, dirty feet. To remember what those line notes are.
That's great. So now we know where the pitches fall, or at least we have a good way of finding out. And by the way, you could come up with your own acronym for egbdf. I can't say it as fast as Georgia. She has more practice. She's good with that kind of thing.
I practice.
You could come up with your own. I mean, I remember learning every good boy does fine. But I'm sure you could use your creativity and come up with a really fun acronym if you'd like to. The important thing is that you have some handy way of remembering which pitch goes on which space or line, because you'll need it right now. Georgia's going to write on our second staff line there. She's going to write 3 to 5 or 6 pitches, and you are not going to write out do's or so's or la's. You are going to write out the absolute names of those pitches, which again, as Georgia mentioned, do not move. Oh, she was kind to us. Only 4 pitches. You should have no problem here. This is just like our normal board work, except this time I'm going to have you write out the names of the pitches, so you can go ahead and pause the video if you'd like. I am going to go ahead and write in the names of these pitches. If my marker will cooperate here. Now I want you to notice something. When we write in sol, fa syllable letters, when we write in a little re, mi, fa, la, something like that, we have always written them in lowercase letters. We're not going to do that here with these pitch names because we want to indicate that these are absolute pitches. These are not the names of solfa syllables that can move around. This is C. It's kind of like a proper noun. When you write basketball, you can write it with a lowercase letter. But when I say Mark, my friend, I give him a capital letter because he's Mark. He's not anything else. That's a C. It's not anything else. So there you go. And now it looks like Georgia has the next one ready for us. So go ahead and take a minute. You could copy these pitches down on a staff at home and then see if you can come up with names for them and write them in all capital letters. And now I'm going to do mine. Is that what you got? Let's do one more, maybe just one more like that. All right, last one.
It's like a little backwards alphabet.
Yeah. All right, so now we've given all of these little melodies names. Each pitch has its own name. Now, just because we've given them names doesn't mean that we might not still want to know the solfa syllables, because the whole reason we've learned the solfa syllables is so that we'll know what the sound of these melodies is like without having to use a piano to play it back for us or something. So let's see if we can copy these. In fact, we're in the same key all the way across. So let's see. I'm going to give you the very first pitch. Underneath our C there, we're going to write high do. And now you can take a minute or 5 minutes or however long it takes you to go back through, and underneath each of those capital letter pitch names, write the lowercase letter solfa syllable. And then Georgia will go through and write them as well.
Here I go. Pause the video if you need to.
Very good.
I'll just keep going here. Do you see how this is working? So these, the pitch names, always stay the same. This is always a G. But now, since I know that this note was high do, he told me this is high do, and then I can just count using my intervals from there. Oh, do to so, that's a fourth, and then I just go on, like all the practice we've done doing solfa so far. Here's another high do.
Very good. All right, well, we've got a whole lot of information. We've got note heads, we've got pitch names, and we've got solfa syllables. So obviously we should have no problem singing these, but we also know that we're in a specific key now. So we could just kind of come up and say do off the top of our head, but I know that that first note should be a C. So to make sure that we're singing in the right key, I'm going to use this little thing, which is a pitch pipe, and it's got the names of all the notes on here. A's, B's, C's, D's, E's, F's, and G's, and some of those ones in between as well, which we'll talk about in the future. So I'm going to play for us a C. So that's my do. My do there, my high do, is a C. So let's sing it. Do. And now that we know our do, we can go through and see if we can sing all of these melodies. We'll do each one and pause in between. Ready? Do, so, re, do. Okay, moving on. The next one will start here. Let's try it. So, mi, fa, ti, do. All right, and the last one picks up right where we left off. So let's do that one. Ready? Do, ti, la, so, mi. All right, so now you know the names of the pitches and you can sing them. That's pretty cool, huh? And that's all we're going to cover today. So thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you'll have fun continuing to learn about not only the solfa syllables, but also the pitches that we find on the staff here in treble clef.